Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Construction Record Podcast, Canada's leading, award-winning construction industry podcast. This is Vince Versace, National Managing Editor of the Daily Commercial News and Journal of Commerce, joining you today. Today's podcast episode is sponsored by BCCSA, the BC Construction Safety Alliance. In particular, today's episode is dedicated to one item only, and that is SiteReadyBC, which is BCCSA's brand new introductory construction safety training course. In today's episode of the podcast, you'll hear from three stakeholders that were involved in the creation of SiteReadyBC. They'll be able to give you context on why it was created, what went into creating it, and what the potential of it is. We spoke to Brooks Patterson, who's from NorLand Limited, Erin Linde, Director of Health and Safety Services at BCCSA, and Kevin Mierau of Mierau Contractors Ltd, and also the current BCCSA Board Chair. The interviews were conducted by Warren Frey, DCN and JOC Digital Media Editor, and myself. We hope that you find the following interviews informative. If you wish to find out more information about SiteReadyBC, we ask that you visit www.bccsa.ca. And with that, to our first interview with Brooks Patterson. Thank you, everyone.
Hello, everybody. I'm here with
Brooks Patterson. I'm the Vice President of Health, Safety, Environment, and Loss Control for NorLand Limited.
Okay, and we're here to talk about SiteReadyBC. So maybe you could explain what that is and how NorLand's involved.
Well, I've been on the board of directors for the Construction Safety Alliance, the BC Construction Safety Alliance, for a number of years, and we were approached with a need. CSTS, which we had previously been licensed out of Alberta, was discontinuing their license with us, and so we had to come up with an alternative. And we've always been uncomfortable with having standards set by other provinces anyway, so we saw this as an opportunity to kind of reinvent the wheel in a much more BC-friendly way. And we've endeavored to do that, and I think we've done a good job.
And from what I gather, this is BC friendly, but it's applicable across Canada, and I presume other places too.
Absolutely, yeah. It's very much it's sort of general safety information, but it's presented in a very accessible way that's very flexible and nimble and multi-platform. So it ticks a bunch of boxes for a lot of different stakeholder groups.
What demographic is this aimed at, or is it aimed at all demographics construction, or specific ones that are new to the industry, or?
It's all the boxes. So it's both for the new and young worker as well as for the seasoned pro. We want to try to capture anyone that could possibly come into contact with any of the hazards that construction presents.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And so let's say I'm a JOQ construction worker, or J&Q construction worker for that matter, and I want to use this. How do I go about doing that? How do I find out about it, first of all? And secondly, after that, how do I get on and go through the process?
BCCSA website will point anyone in the right direction as to where to go. So we're hopeful to have the first draft sort of up and running by the end of this month. We're a little behind schedule because of some stuff that's going on in the world in the last couple of months. It's kind of affected everybody, but the folks over at the BCCSA have been working overtime to get this thing back on track, and a big shout out to them because they put a ton of work into this. It's really in depth.
Okay. And that's another thing I should ask, given the pandemic and everything else we're dealing with. What I assume this whole sort of protocol and process was written up before the pandemic happened. So how did you account for the pandemic once that happened? Because that's obviously a safety concern.
Yeah, for sure. Well, the big obstacle was shooting video. So just getting access to job sites to be able to get the footage that we needed to really enhance our visual-based learning. That's what this whole program is based on, is being able to not just tell somebody, to be able to show them what it looks like. So I think that we are really creative in how we managed to pull that off. A lot of the footage was done through three different employers. So NorLand Limited was involved, Scott Construction was involved, and PCL. And they spent a lot of time to make sure that sites were set up properly, and so that the film crew could show up and do their work in a safe manner and not be too disruptive, and actually really convey what construction is really like.
Mm-hmm. And just in terms of like the courseware itself, like does it address COVID and other such health concerns, or is that something you're going to have to add after the fact?
It addresses it as general hygiene because we've always had a problem with exposure to biological hazards and that type of thing. So we just put it as part of that curriculum, that it's good hygiene practices are good hygiene practices. And those have been enhanced through COVID, but have always been there and are really not going away now. So.
And I guess that's another question I should ask is if you've got new things that come up, like or new protocols you have to add, how easy is it to add to the system so that you can then implement it?
It's nothing is impossible as far as updating material, and we'll have to be nimble going forward as regulations change and standards change. There'll be an ongoing review process that will take place internally to make sure that we're compliant with all of the provincial laws as well as federal laws and anything else that might come down the pipe.
And you said this is a BCCSA initiative. Did you partner with anybody else for it? Obviously, the member groups were a part of it. How did that come about with all the different groups coming together to make this thing happen?
So the BCCSA has what they call a Research and Opportunities Fund. And so this project is being funded through those monies that would otherwise go back to WorkSafe BC as surplus money. So we're allowed to keep a certain amount of capital for this type of a project. And the board of directors felt that this was appropriate, given the fact that there was going to be a need because CSTS had gone away, that this was kind of a no-brainer. So it's fully funded through the BC Construction Safety Alliance.
And previously, we've both been to our share of construction conferences, I'm sure. This is the kind of thing that you would roll out at a construction conference, or at least give a demo. Absolutely. How do you do that now? Because obviously that's not happening anymore, at least for the foreseeable future. Well,
what we've discovered through the whole COVID pandemic is that there's a real thirst for knowledge right now, and the weekly bi-weekly webinars that the BC Construction Safety Alliance have been putting on have been attracting 60, 70 participants and upwards from there. So there's a large appetite for finding out about what's going on online, more so than ever before, because we're all dialed in online if we're working from home or remotely or what have you. And so there's a lot of that going on. So we will probably do some type of a web rollout initially, and eventually we're all going to be able to get together again. And so by that time we'll have some bigger splash, and we'll always be adding to the offerings online because we don't think that's ever going away, regardless of what goes on with public health matters.
And that's another thing I should ask is, given you're going to have people back on the site, how mobile friendly is this initiative? Like, can you just do it on an iPad or?
Yep, it'll be available on all Android devices and iOS devices, so it's going to be very, very nimble.
Okay, and is there anything I'm not asking about this initiative that you think should be highlighted?
Well, just the breadth of the offerings. So there's more modules than were previously in CSTS. There's 20 modules currently that are broken up into 4 parts. So it's more far-reaching than previous online training systems have been. So it's a pretty in-depth course, but also it should be reminded that this doesn't take the place of on-site mentoring and training that needs to occur anyway. This is to complement that. So that's really the intent of this type of training, is to establish a baseline from which supervisors and other trainers can work from.
And you mentioned there's more modules. What are the core ones in the first place, and what are the sort of ones that you've added?
Well, one of the nice things is all employers in Canada need to make sure their employees are trained in WHMIS. So this one actually has a WHMIS 2015 module built into it with a separate certificate. So, included in the cost of admission is free WHMIS certification, which is kind of nice for those employers that have yet to catch up with that.
Okay, and do you know what the cost of admission is yet?
I don't know that we've worked that out yet, so that's something that's still in development.
Okay, great. And is there anything else you think people should know about the system?
I just think that for those that are unfamiliar with what the BCCSA has to offer, they'd be well advised, if they're in the construction industry, to visit the website and see the types of courses and offerings, as well as, on the COVID side of things, there's a host of COVID-related information, from frequently asked questions to forms and signage. They were really on the ball on this one when the whole crisis came down. Within that week, we were starting to put up resources for employers to download for free. So I encourage anyone that's not familiar with the association to check them out.
I'm here with
Erin Linde, Director of Health and Safety Services at the BCCSA.
and we're here to talk about the Site Ready initiative. And so maybe you could tell me what were sort of the beginnings of the Site Ready initiative, how it came to be.
Well, previously before SiteReadyBC, we were using a program called CSTS 09 out of Alberta. And they updated their program for 2020, and it no longer met the needs for us here in BC as it's very Alberta focused. So we decided internally that it would be a great idea to create our own online course. And so that's how the idea of SiteReadyBC came about.
Okay. And what are some of the differences? Like, what is Alberta specific and that BC needs or doesn't need?
So the difference really just comes with the WorkSafe or Workers' Compensation Act regulations. And so there is some different regulations between Alberta and BC. Mm-hmm. So therefore, we determined it was necessary for BC to have their own new online new employee health and safety orientation course available for them.
Okay. So how did you go about implementing it?
So the process to get it implemented, the BCCSA applied for an RDO fund through WorkSafe BC, and that was accepted. It also has to go through a process of our board of directors who sit for the BCCSA. So there's approval processes that go through that way as well. From there, once all the approvals were there for the funding, we needed to create a stakeholder committee. So that stakeholder committee was made up of safety professionals from our prime contractor technical advisory committee. Mm-hmm. And so I would say in total there was about 10 stakeholders. And from that moment, when we created the committee, the SiteReadyBC committee in December, we started meeting weekly in January. And from there, the weekly meetings were to determine what is the content that should be in SiteReadyBC. What, together as major prime contractors, we all, it was great because it was collaboration to determine, what is the most important thing that a new and young worker needs to know coming into a construction site? What do we want to help assist employers with giving these workers some basic ground knowledge about construction sites and safety?
What is some of that knowledge?
So some of that knowledge is, what are the hazards on a construction site? What are some of the law and legislation requirements for working on a site, which means that workers have rights and responsibilities, and so do employers. And so we want to make sure that workers going into a site already know what those rights and responsibilities are. And they have the right to know what hazards are affecting their workplace. And so there's very common hazards that happen on a construction site. And so such as working around mobile equipment or working at heights. And so we want to make sure that workers, before they begin work, they have a general understanding of the major hazards that are out there on site so that they know so that they know what the controls are, or to at least, most importantly, when to stay away.
Mm-hmm. And I would assume before COVID, but definitely during COVID and after, presumably, this is all on an online process.
That's right. So we met weekly up until COVID started, so mid-March. And then after that, for the most part, the content was already developed. Mm-hmm. So from there, the BCCSA, we worked with D2L, who is our online provider who's helping us create the course to put it online, and Brightspace will be the platform that the course will be held on. Mm-hmm. So we now work with the developers, D2L, and our and some of our project team, the writers, the content writers, to ensure that, so now it's in the development stage of being online. So mm-hmm. It's easy to work on mobilely like this mm-hmm. To complete the project.
So if you're a young construction worker and you want to take this, you go online to do it, I assume, but is there a sort of worksite component that now you kind of have to work around or figure out ways to do instead because of the pandemic, or because of social distancing? Can you just go on site anyway and just got to adapt to it?
So The online course itself will be mobile, so workers can take it anywhere online, including their mobile phones. So it's very versatile and easy and flexible to use. Once they start using the program, they have 30 days to complete it, and their progress will always stay where they're at. So whether they go online on a computer or use their mobile phone. But it is true that there is some different procedures and practices in place due to COVID. And so before a worker even steps on site, they would have to know what the company's procedures are regarding COVID-19 protocols. Yeah.
Okay, and I've read in the background for this that it's meant for BC, but it also could be transported globally, really. So maybe you could speak to how you guys kind of work those two things together.
At the BCCSA, we know that safety is not a competition, and so we wanted to create an online platform that any province or jurisdiction can use. And so when we designed SiteReadyBC, we specifically created the first module as law and legislation. So this one is very specific to BC, but any other province that would like to adapt, all they have to do is switch out module 1 to include their specific legislation. So the rest of the modules are general information that can be used Canada-wide.
When is this being rolled out, or is it all rolled out already? Is it ready to go right now?
So SiteReadyBC will be rolled out at the end of June. It's still in the final touches of development, but it'll be ready by the end of June. So.
Okay, and is there anything else people should know about the program?
SiteReadyBC is going to be a state-of-the-art online orientation program that will be interactive, easy to use, and very educational. It's going to help workers to know what their rights and responsibilities are entering a construction site for the first time. And it also helps employers to know what kind of workers they're getting who already had this basic training. So therefore, they'll be left to provide site-specific training, which in the end helps the workers and the employers.
Hello, everyone. This is Vince Versace, National Managing Editor of the Daily Commercial News and Journal of Commerce, joining you today. I have with me Kevin Mierau, owner of Mierau Contractors Ltd, and also board chair of the BC Construction Safety Alliance. And Kevin's joining me today so we can talk about SiteReadyBC. How are you, Kevin?
I'm doing very well, Vince. Thank you. Appreciate the invite to chat today.
Yeah, no problem. And thank you for accepting it. This is some pretty exciting developments as far as site safety and programming in BC. And we're talking about SiteReadyBC. And I think the listeners might get an interesting perspective listening to you talk about the importance of SiteReadyBC from a safety point of view and also for construction firms in BC. So maybe I'll start off with, why don't you tell us a bit more about how we've gotten to this point that SiteReadyBC is being launched?
Yeah, absolutely, Vince. Thank you. So SiteReadyBC is a program that was developed by the BC Construction Safety Alliance, is being developed, very close to being launched, with the basic primary intent to educate new or young workers that are coming into the construction industry and to make them aware of what construction sites are about in terms of legislation, hazards, awareness. So they're coming into site and are knowledgeable in the basics beforehand, so that if they're on site, have a situation that develops that may require more specific training, they know that they should have training or be aware that they can be asking their supervisor or employer for training, and ultimately then providing a safer workplace for them and a safer workplace for all. It is a very BC oriented program, which is very, very exciting to have one that we've developed to bring to the industry. And there's modules that are part of that program that those taking the program will go through. There will be tests involved, and they also come out with their WMIS training. So they're identifying the different symbols and traits that come with WMIS. and quite excited to have that launched here in the near future.
And it's an online training program, correct?
It is online.
Mm-hmm.
It is fully accessible via pretty much any platform you can think of, whether it's your smartphone, your iPad or tablet, or your desktop. And that's part of the versatility that was needed to reach as many workers as we can, as many as we can that want to reach that training.
For sure. And we were saying just a bit of the history too. So before this, there was a construction safety training system, CSTS 09, right? Which was the safety orientation.
Correct.
And that was owned by the Alberta Construction Safety Association, and the BCCSA was the sole distributor of the training program in BC. That's changed now,
Yeah.
because was it Alberta has decided to kind of go out on their own and launch their own new Alberta focused course, as far as I understand, correct?
Alberta did launch their own course, was not suitable to BC. BCCSA, starting in the fall of 19, started a mandate to develop the new SiteReadyBC program, and has worked very diligently over the last several months to get to ready to launch stage amidst COVID and a lot of remote interactions. And my hat's off to all the stakeholders that participated to help provide input, reviewing layouts, ensuring that what we're launching is what industry needs. And I firmly believe that we've achieved that.
Perfect. And I mean, and you're speaking with both us. Yes, you may be the board chair of the BCCSA, but you have your own employees that sometimes you bring on, right? And this type of training is vital. One would, it's not a stretch to imagine that, correct? You know, to get people familiarized with what do you need to know when you're on site. I was curious about the adaptability of SiteReadyBC as far as its potential to evolve as needs arise.
Yeah, no, that's another great part of the platform of SiteReadyBC. It has the modules in it already, and while that provides your basic knowledge, your basic awareness competencies, it can expand into more. And we haven't thought this through. We don't have a total plan to it, but it could be tying into more specific, site safety training needs. Should that be a desire of industry? It also, our recent COVID impacts on life have had a total revisit of all training needs. And my first thought is, well, SiteReadyBC is a great platform to expand some of the aspects of other online training and tie into SiteReadyBC. Or, obviously we're not doing any in-person training right now, and jumping on to the SiteReadyBC platform for some of those other existing offerings to adapt into the program. Really it's as limitless as our ideas can be. And also increases the ability to reach as many people as we can, where we're not having to logistically get people from remote areas into a training classroom. It's allowing people to do that from their remote communities or from their home at night, or virtually anywhere.
And that really speaks to the nature of kind of as well the kind of the future workforce that we're talking about, one that's a bit more tech savvy or comfortable with that type of learning because they've been doing it for a while, the online type learning.
Yeah, oh absolutely. And that's where the focus on the young workers comes into play. Not everybody's going to have a desktop. Not everybody would have a laptop or maybe even a tablet to work on, but they're definitely going to have an iPhone in their pocket or a smartphone of some sorts in their pocket, and can very easily navigate and successfully navigate the SiteReadyBC modules. and it does feel modern and new, and will be welcoming to those that use it.
Is there anything else you'd like to say as it concerns the development of SiteReadyBC and what people should keep in mind?
I don't think there's much to add, Vince, but my hat's off to the staff at BCCSA that have worked so hard to get the program to launch, and again for the stakeholders with the industry's input on demonstrating and sharing what the industry needs and doesn't need to ensure that we have a platform that is current, relevant, and a benefit to both the safety aspect of the program and also to the employers who are looking at from a productivity, from a financial aspect, as well as the safety end. So that's it, Vince.
All right. Well, with that, thank you so much, Kevin.
Thank you.